Hey everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, whatever it might be whenever you're watching this. We are going to be talking about mixed methods today. Before we get into that though, I have the consistent reminder that I've been letting you all know about to please reach out to Concordia's IT department to set up SPSS on your computer. SPSS, again, is the statistical analysis software that we're going to be using in our quantitative analysis portion of the course, which is the current one we're in. Please make sure to get that set up. You're going to need that to complete class activities and assignments. So if you have any issues setting that up, please let me know, and then I'll reach out to Concordia's IT department as well. But today we're going to be talking about mixed methods, like I said. So let's get into mixed methods. So what is mixed methods? We've talked about an overview of both quantitative and qualitative research. Remember, quantitative research, think numerical data, stats, math, computations. Qualitative research, think of that more in-depth type of information that's not numerical. Think of interviews, focus groups, that sort of thing. Mixed methods is combining both of those together. So mixed, as it's in the title, right? It's mixing both of those together. So mixed methods research combines elements of both quantitative research and qualitative research in order to answer your research question. So mixed methods can help you gain a more complete picture than purely a standalone quantitative or qualitative study. It integrates the benefits as well as some of the limitations of both, and we'll get into exactly how that looks. I just wanted to throw out some examples of what are some mixed methods research questions. What do these look like? We're not going to go through each of them, but these are here for your reference, just as a framework for you. And identifying the variables, population, and potential samples of each. You'll see in the notes for these slides on the Moodle page that you can take a look at each. But when you're identifying if this is a mixed methods or not, what is the quantitative element? What is the qualitative? So let's take that first question, for instance. To what extent does the frequency of traffic accidents reflect cyclist perceptions of road safety in Amsterdam? So you can think of what is the quantitative element here? Well, it's the frequency, the number of traffic accidents in a given period of time. And then cyclist perceptions of road safety. That could be qualitative through interviews, focus groups, qualitative surveys that you can have with cyclists in Amsterdam. And some variables there, right? The variables like we just talked about, the frequency of traffic accidents and the cyclist perceptions. Then your population is your cyclists in Amsterdam. And then potential samples, right? That could be maybe a select group. Maybe it's 50 cyclists, whoever might be that you're looking at here. Let's do number two, that second question, student perceptions and academic outcomes. So, how do student perceptions of their school environment relate to differences in test scores? So think, kind of reversed it on that one. So test scores being the quantitative element there. The qualitative being student perceptions of their school environments. You could interview students, or you could have focus groups of students about their school environment and get perceptions there, and then relate that back to, okay, what are the student test scores, the qualitative element there. So these are examples of mixed methods research questions. You can see all throughout there, right, of examples there. And you can use this in so many different ways that we'll talk more about. So when to use mixed methods. Mixed methods research may be the right choice if your research process suggests that quantitative or qualitative data alone will not sufficiently answer your research question. So there are several common reasons for using mixed methods research. Here are three key ones. Number one is generalizability. So qualitative research usually has a smaller sample size. Remember qualitative, thinking those interviews, focus group sides of things. And thus is not generalizable in most cases. And in mixed methods research, this comparative weakness is mitigated by the comparative strength of a large data set, a large set of respondents, of participants. Externally valid quantitative research can help to with generalizability that qualitative research cannot. So integrating both can be a benefit there. Contextualization. So mixing methods allows you to put findings into context and add richer detail to your conclusion. So using the qualitative side now to illustrate the quantitative findings can help you essentially put meat on the bone in your analysis to help you fill in the gaps, to add some more depth. So if you had some statistical findings, but then you can also supplement with quotes and qualitative information. Those things can help to illustrate the story of the data a lot better. And then credibility. So using different methods to collect data on the same subject can make your results even that more credible, right? If the qualitative and quantitative data coverage um, uh, using both methods to cover your data strengthens the validity of your conclusions. So this process of what we've talked about before is called triangulation. Excuse me. Triangulation is where you're using multiple methods on the same subject, on the same study to make sure that your results are consistent, that they're valid, that you're receiving a better picture of what the data is actually showing. So it's a really great way to add credibility to your study. So keep in mind that mixed methods research doesn't just mean collecting both types of data. You need to carefully consider the relationship between the two and how you'll integrate them into more coherent conclusions. So how do the quantitative and qualitative mix? If I'm looking at student perceptions on their school environment, and in the quantitative side, I'm asking certain set of questions, in the qualitative, completely unrelated questions. Well, that's not going to get us to a good place. We need consistent types of questions. We need a consistent focus. We need to have those things that help to produce greater outcomes, more valid outcomes, outcomes that are going to get us to a point where, hey, using these mixed methods approach got us to a place that we were able to better elucidate and figure out what the data is actually telling us. So mixed methods, research, design. So I just wanted to mention a couple of examples here that I've worked in. So Springtide Research Institute is, and I have some books in the back there that I could grab, but is where we looked at young folks' perception of things like careers, politics, religion. It was really interesting. And to get to a better place, what we did is we used a national panel, a representative panel of young people. And so we had thousands, it was typically 1 to 5,000, I believe, individuals in the panels that we used. And we conducted surveys on those folks. Again, think of the quantitative side there. So the survey is able to access and study a very large population, thousands of Gen Zers, thousands of young people, survey them, and then use statistical analyses on those surveys. But what we also did was we had interviews that we conducted. So we had not necessarily with the same participants, but with young people in our network. So we had the generalizable wide scale findings of the quantitative side. But then to illustrate these points further and find consistency, we had qualitative interviews with a similar focus. So then when we're discussing the data, we can say, okay, so 75%, this is not a real stat. This is making up stat. 75% of young people distrust the current political system. And so then we could also then, if that was a finding, we'd have a qualitative, a quote from one or multiple young people to illustrate that. So maybe it was that finding in the quote next to it to be able to, they're coinciding with it, to be able to say, this person said, I really distrust the political system because this, and that. So you can get multiple components in how we describe the data, finding that the qualitative and the quantitative are consistent. We're having consistent findings. So our different methods are producing consistent results. Those are really great things to be able to produce through a study. The Social Research Lab is another example, but a little bit different than Springtide Research Institute. At the Social Research Lab, this is at the University of Northern Colorado. Did a lot of research for organizations and speakers and these sorts of things. And we'd often employ mixed methods. So we would do content analyses, we would do a survey and do interviews and focus groups. The reason for that, the same sort of reason, is to be able to get consistent results, to be able to illustrate the data in a more effective way. And throughout the course, actually, I've linked a couple of articles or some documents from, I believe, the Social Research Lab in the Moodle page. So you'll be able to actually to read some of these reports that were written up mostly during my time there. So you can see what actually mixed methods approach look like in kind of a practical sense. And we can look at all the different things about that. We can look at the literature review sections. We can look at the interview sections. We can look at the survey analysis section. So you'll be able to actually see what this looks like in the example readings. Let me make sure that we're on the right spot now as we move forward. Perfect. Okay. Uh, so some advantages of mixed methods. All right. So, three key advantages of mixed methods. So, one is the best of both worlds analysis. So, mixed methods combines the contextual depths that qualitative data can give you with the generalizability and the statistical rigor of quantitative data. So, we kind of talked about that, right? That it's the best of both worlds. And so, the strength of one type of data can compensate for the weakness of another. So, an example, qualitative studies often miss the lived experience. Quantitative studies often miss the more lived experience of participants. Adding qualitative data there uh, provides richer context and depth to those analyses. On the other side, qualitative data often lacks generalizability. Remember, we talked about that in the last slide. So incorporating the quantitative data component can help to validate findings and broaden applicability there. Number two, methodological flexibility here. Mixed methods transcend rigid disciplinary boundaries and research paradigms, allowing for greater creativity and adaptability in your research design. So you're able to be less rigid and more flexible with how you're gaining the data, how you're going about your study. And researchers can tailor their approach to the specific needs of the study. So your specific needs of the study, you can be more flexible. You can tailor exactly what you need to do, and you can leverage both the exploratory, maybe that's more the qualitative front, with the explanatory, the quantitative techniques. So you can do both. So it gives you that flexibility of how am I going to get to the answers that I need? How am I going to get to answer the research questions that I have? And three, theory generation and hypothesis testing. So mixed methods research uniquely allows for simultaneous theory generation, a really good qualitative strength, as well as hypothesis testing, which is a good quantitative strength within the same study. So this creates a more holistic approach to inquiry. So again, why would you use mixed methods? Why would you want to? So it achieves that deeper understanding while maintaining external validity. It also addresses complex research questions that neither method maybe could answer in full. And then mixed methods also enhances credibility and practical application of findings. So how we can actually apply this, right? Where's the credibility that others can see, and how we can actually apply this learning? Now, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. There's some disadvantages of mixed methods as well, of course. So some key disadvantages is one, an increased workload. So mixed methods research is more labor intensive, requiring the collection, analysis, and integration of two distinct types of data. It's almost like doubling up on your work. Not almost like, it is doubling up on, say, normal studies work. Mixed methods research designs also demand interdisciplinary teams rather than individuals, quite typically, which can increase complexity. So time-consuming, potentially more costly as well compared to standalone quantitative or qualitative studies. All those things that increase workload is something to consider. Number two, conflicting or divergent results. So when quantitative and qualitative findings are in conflict with one another, let's say they're not consistent in your findings, it can be challenging to interpret those discrepancies and decide how to reconcile them. So how do you then communicate the data? If your qualitative studies are telling you this thing and your quantitative research is telling you another thing, that can be a difficult thing to decipher. And then confounding variables or biases in either data set may complicate interpretation, requiring an even greater level of data scrutiny and methodological scrutiny. Because if you're doing both, there's more room for error than two, right? And the type of biases that we talked about earlier. Integration challenges. Because qualitative and quantitative data are inherently different, finding systematic and unbiased ways to combine them can be difficult at times. So a risk of bias during the synthesis phase of the methods can happen if they're not well aligned. So making sure that, okay, if we have our survey questionnaire, how do we make sure that our interview guide, our interview questions are also consistent, that there is a shared focus of all of this that doesn't deviate or doesn't shift what we're actually trying to get to with the questions we're trying to answer. Those things have to have consistency, but because they're different methods, that can be tough to achieve at times. So some key considerations. So adequate planning and resources are really essential for managing a workload of mixed methods research and ensuring robust data collection and integration. Those things can be difficult at times. And then researchers like you all have to anticipate and prepare for the possibility of potentially inconsistent results and develop strategies on how would we address those and how do we present those. And those are things we'll actually talk about. We're going to have a section a couple of days where we talk about how do we communicate research? How do we communicate data? We'll talk more about that. Okay. Applied social research. So this is just different from the mixed methods section here. What I'm talking about here with applied social research, it's just wanting to emphasize again, what do we mean by applied social research? Because we could do research for the sake of research, but we want to get something done. So applied equals results. So things like social change initiatives, organizational development, policy impact. What applied social research does is it bridges two worlds of academia and non-academia. So when you think of like what is social research, right? First, let's talk about what is that on the second side, social research. It's our understanding of the social world. How do we find that greater understanding? Because really it's limited to our personal lived experiences. So we need research to tell us more about it. So a social research has an empirical framework, right? Providing tools, all the things that we've talked about to understand the social world around us better, whether it's through mixed methods or a social or quantitative research or qualitative research, whatever it might be. That's the things that encompass social research. And in the social world, right, when we talk about that, it's society and culture, politics and government, organizations and institutions, educational systems, small groups, families, teams, you name it. Those are the things that are going to social research. So then what makes it applied? If we know what social research is, what makes it applied social research? So applied social research connects research with action, with the mission to create meaningful change. So it goes beyond the theoretical knowledge by combining rigorous scholarship with actual practical solutions. And that's really the world that I come from. Is yes, we can have theory all day, we can have research all day, but if we're not doing something about it, what's the point, essentially? Applied researchers consider action from the start of your study. So what is the practical relevance of this research? That's what you're asking day one before you actually begin a study. How can the findings be used to promote things like social change, improve certain systems, improve decision making, or inform decision making? Those are the things that we talk about in applied social research. So why is this actually important? Why am I mentioning this? Why am I sectioning this off as its own component? Applied research ensures that results are actionable and impactful, and that we can address real world challenges, right? Concordia is all about preparing students to provide real world change, to be prepared for real world, making a difference out there. So this is what we talk about. Yes, you're going to learn research skills throughout your time here, but I want to really emphasize the applied component here. And really a successful applied researcher anticipates potential barriers to implementation, works to ensure your findings resonate with stakeholders and decision makers. How do you communicate data effectively? Where do we need data? How do you identify that in the world, this is where we need more research? All those things are actually going to be potentially answered by you during your final presentations at the end of this course. So key steps to effective social applied social research. So you can look at even further notes in the or further notes under the slides here when I attach them in the Moodle page. But you got to understand the issue first and foremost, right? Examine the issue with all of the sociological imagination, the historical, international, and multidisciplinary framework. So leverage prior research and practical experience. Number two, study the issue, right? Make sure that you know where what the issue, the nuances of the issue. You know the certain stakeholders involved and the different partners involved. And then you have to map out data-informed solutions. So how do you map knowledge to action, essentially? So determine how your research can help solve the problem. So even before you conduct it, how do you think your research is going to help to solve the problem? Identify a receptive audience or market for that. And then you have to implement solutions. So you have to make sure that the solutions you're implementing, you're testing maybe a solution or theory, you're testing these things, you're implementing something and testing it out. Implementing, testing solutions, setting measurable benchmarks. These are really important as well. And then can make sure that what does success look like, right, through this implementation. And then sharing evidence and iterating. We have to, that's the entire scientific method. That is the research process, that we share what we've learned, that we make sure that others can collaborate, others can critique what we've learned, critique our methods, critique our study, or build upon what we found out, and then stay engaged. So commit to long-term involvement, testing solutions over time to ensure greater sustainability, build a growing body of evidence, and foster institutional change. So again, you can look more on these. I just wanted to include kind of a framework for you to think about this a little bit differently. Think about this very practically in an applied social research sense, because this is really important to inherent to at least the world that I've come from. And then what we're going to do at the end of this class of you essentially building out a research proposal. Where do I want to see some applied social research, and how would I go about that? And you can use those exact steps. So example areas for applied social research. Here's a hint, it's everywhere. So whether it's in politics, civic engagement, human services, public health, colleges, organizational change, wherever it might be, you're going to find applied social research everywhere, and you're going to find a need for it everywhere. And that's where you can step in. And even if you're not a researcher, quote unquote, in your future careers, what you can be in your career is someone who has research literacy, knowledge of applied social research, and identifying a need for it. And that can be a very powerful thing in whatever industry or organization you're in. So think about, your potential future career path. Think about what you're interested in. And then now, maybe in downtime or whatever it might be as you're writing assignments, think about what maybe is needed from a research standpoint. What knowledge are we missing? What do we need to learn more of in those areas? Okay, two last very quick things. Again, reminder, get SPSS set up on your computer, get it downloaded and set up and working. And then also get Qualtrics set up for you as well. So set up your Qualtrics account. So SPSS is an actual app that you're going to download. Qualtrics is a website that you should have an account through Concordia for. And this Qualtrics is how we're going to build surveys. It's a website that we're going to build surveys through. So make sure you have access to both. Make sure that you get SPSS downloaded and your account set up with Concordia's IT department. Concordia's IT department will also give you your Qualtrics account information. So you go to qualtrics.com and you'll set up your account through there. So please let me know of any questions you have about what we've talked about today, or even setting up SPSS and Qualtrics. But other than that, that's it for today. Thanks, everybody.